Okay, so time for the main event. Want to introduce Matt Sandler from Chromatic. He's the co-founder of that company. They're doing some interesting innovation on helping people practice, perform, and teach music. He's a longtime supporter of the tech scene in Los Angeles, longtime member of Lean LA. So I'd like to turn it over to Matt. Thanks.
First of all, thank you guys all for coming out. I think this is going to be a really helpful event for both entrepreneurs, people in Hollywood, to see kind of both sides of the coin. What we've done with the panel today is bring people that are, Hollywood executives and people who are in the trenches on the day-to-day for talk about startups, how to get deals done. My background's in music. I ended up, starting a music education startup, having no idea what to do with the industry. And so the idea behind this kind of was spurred from entrepreneurs wanting to know, how do you get deals done? What do those deals look like? Who do you have to talk to actually execute these things? I think one of the things that we always tout, as Patrick alluded to, was that we as LA have this incredible resource, Hollywood. And what we're going to try to explore here tonight is really talking about how do you actually get things done with Hollywood so that you can use them to the best benefit for your companies, etc. So I think the first part of what I'd like to do is get an idea of what the crowd is like. Who here is an entrepreneur or working at a startup? Yeah. Awesome. Who here works in Hollywood, media, entertainment? Suckers. So, can you guys hold up your hands one more time? So, entrepreneurs, these are the people that you want to talk to, stalk after the event. But for real, I think it's going to be a really interesting event, mostly due to the panel that we've assembled. I'm not going to do justice for all the introductions, so what I'd like to do is just go down the line. No more than 1 minute. We don't need to hear your full life story. But what I'd like to do is get an idea of who you are, what your background is, and why these people care. So, Brian, you want to get started?
I have to go first. Hi, Brian Norgard, founder of Chill, along with my co-founder right here, Dan Gould. Been an entrepreneur forever, so I don't think there was a starting point. This is just a continuation of my lifelong dream. Currently doing Chill, which is a social video site focused around discovery. Before Chill, we did a company called Nuru, which was acquired by News Corp in 2006. And then I did about 4 companies in between before figuring out exactly what I wanted to do with Chill. One of them was Adly. Just excited to be here to share some knowledge and answer some questions and tell you that it's really probably going to be harder than you think it's going to be.
My name is Eric Galen. I'm an entertainment technology attorney for the last 12 years down here in LA. I've worked with both large entertainment companies as well as creative professionals. After practicing law at some large law firms for about 8 years, I left and started my own startup, Music180.com, which is an online artist development community that helps upcoming artists meet and work with high-level music industry and Hollywood professionals. So in the course of doing that, I actually saw kind of what my clients saw on the ground level and got to deal with all the nitty-gritty stuff of getting deals done. And we partnered with hundreds of the world's best producers and publishers and labels and management companies and things like that. So the last few years have been a great education for me, and hopefully some of that will be helpful to the audience.
Hey guys, I'm Matt Nazio. I work at a creative artist agency and have for the last 7 years. And help grow our digital media practice. We kind of segment it into a few different areas, which I'll explain quickly. One side is sort of helping clients across the agency think about how to engage with technology, whether that be creating content for mobile or the web, or how they interact with startups. Another piece of it is I cover Silicon Valley on behalf of the firm, so we have an office up in San Francisco. And it's literally the same way that colleagues of mine cover studios and networks. I cover VCs, tech companies, and entrepreneurs to try to find sort of an opportunity for CA and our clients to grow. And then the last piece is actually building new startup companies from scratch from within CAA, where we can play the role as co-founder, building the management team, finding financing, bringing in talent as appropriate, and helping grow those companies. Actually, one is sitting down in the hall. So, nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Abe Burns. I head up digital operations for Gaio Siri, who, if you're not familiar, is an entertainment entrepreneur, manages Madonna, A-Rod, and a bunch of, he's worked with a lot of people in his career. We also are guys part of a VC fund with Ashton Kutcher called A Grade, and they invest in about over 50 companies. And we're kind of spread over from entertainment to sports to kind of all over the place in the tech world. Before that, I was at Frontline Management, working with bands like Maroon 5 and Cerberus, Stone Temple Pilots, stuff like that. And then before that, I was at Variety Magazine. I ran their digital marketing for about 2.5 years. And before that, I was at Sony. That's where I started. Actually, a couple of us started at Sony, kind of funny, in New York. But I did digital marketing there as well. And good times.
My name is Rob Bonstein, and my history definitely comes from the music and record label side, where I was at Virgin Records and Epic for about 7 years in a couple of different capacities, definitely focusing on the digital, pioneering the digital finance models for sales analysis as iTunes was growing at Epic Records, and ending up in the digital marketing side of things there. And I now work at a management firm called The Creed Company. Principal Brandon Creed manages the artist Bruno Mars along with other writers and producers, and I'm the general manager. We're a kind of very small, startup-y kind of environment ourselves.
Hi, I'm Matt Kozlov. I'm the CEO of Moonshark, we used to be known as Creative Mobile Labs. We're a startup mobile game publisher, as Maz referred to. We're actually backed by CAA as well as Qualcomm. Our business is connecting Hollywood talent, writers, directors, animators, musicians, athletes, up with independent game developers to launch great mobile games. We're actually coming out with our first few games in the next few months, so that's very exciting for us. Nothing's out in the marketplace yet, but stay tuned. Prior to being CEO of Moonshark, I was at Sony Music. Actually, I worked with Rob. And I ran all of the web and mobile products for Sony Music artists, so all of our artists' websites, MySpace pages when that was an important thing, as well as mobile games and mobile apps, which we started launching. And in some cases, we're making more money with our artists' mobile apps than with albums. That's not a rule, certainly, but it was an interesting growth opportunity for us at Sony Music. And prior to that, I was at Yahoo doing corporate strategy, media and entertainment, product development there. And then before that, I was a management strategy consultant for a few years that I don't like to talk about. And I'm also an advisor to Chromatic, which is an incredible company. I'm really proud to be a part of it. So kudos to Matt Sandler, too.
So I think one of the things that we're all curious about, and considering that there are a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience, possibly with first-time startups, I'd like to hear each one of your first deals that you did, either on the Hollywood side or as a startup doing business with Hollywood. And I don't really care about, hey, we did this, it looks great, it made so many sales. What were the mechanics, as best you can legally tell us? And let's start, Maz?
Yeah, let's do it. Year is 2006. YouTube is exploding on the back of sort of SNL content. I think it was like Chronicles of Narnia is like exploding all over the place, and that's what everybody's seeing. We were working closely with Sequoia, a partner there named Mark Kwame, and he said, we've invested in YouTube. It's explosive growth is incredible, but most of the content is actually pirated from other rights holders. There's a version of this where maybe we could partner with the best content creators in Hollywood. Since SNL content was driving so much of that value, how do we think about creating a premium version of YouTube? And so we created a venture together, Funny or Die, and brought in our client who at the time was launching their production entity, Will Ferrell and Adam McKay, launching Gary Sanchez, and together we formed an entity that today is much, much bigger than that, is 6 television shows and film label and 2 comedy tours, and sort of walk through that process of how do you bring an artist to the table who otherwise, in many other contexts, would have just put a video like The Landlord up on a platform like YouTube and never seen a piece of that. But instead, he's now a significant equity owner and a founder of a much larger entity, and it's sort of the first one we took a stab at.
Brian, do you want to give us from kind of the startup, scrappy startup early on?
It's really all a big blur. I can't remember the first one. I can tell you something recent. So with our newest site, Chill, sort of we have a core belief that it's relationships before transactions. And I think that when people jump into this celebrity domain, the first thing they think of is, I want to be transactional. I want that person to rep my stuff, or I want them to be on my site. And so we sort of took the opposite approach, which is to say, who's doing really innovative stuff and who's open to having a conversation not about transactions, but really about what's possible. So I threw a couple of dinners for a bunch of guys, some creative directors, some managers, some just friends of the celebrity, and we had really candid conversation, which led to countless meetings. But I feel like that's the basis for success in our ability to interface with celebrities, which is purely figuring out who is interested in actually trying new things. I've never been successful going, straight to the board and saying, let's do a deal.
Rob?
I think that the experience that I have coming from the label side was having seen a lot of content deals being done, and I think my experience is going to be indicative of the complexity of all these things, which is that the people who are the true stakeholders at the label level, who work directly with the artists and the managers, aren't necessarily involved in the deal process. When it comes to something as complex as licensing music, which, as some of you who do music stuff might know, has multiple levels of copyrights for compositions and for recordings, and is a real pain in the ass. I saw a number of deals get done that, once they were finished, were not of any interest to the label for any marketing reasons. They had kind of larger strategic goals in mind for the company, and taking large dollar amount advances, and I saw a lot of from inside the organization, a lot of parts that never really meshed the way that they should. And being close to the stakeholders, being close to the artists, and now working directly with artists at a management firm is clearly a better way to drive things. If you really get the buy-in from the artist, a lot of times they can help move the larger organizations. But those opportunities are few and far between. So there's a lot of challenges, I think, to overcome.
I think to your point, though, also like working from the label side, because we both we worked at the same way. Like I feel like it was always companies would come in and be like, oh, this is starting to blow up. We really want to use this product, but then it would take. There's that whole process of you're prepared to wait. Like you're going to have to work through a lot of, depending, especially if you're working on the music side and you're licensing content and things like that. Like that's going to take a pretty long time. And like you're saying, by that time that deal's worked out, the label might not even have an interest in it.
MySpace Music is a good example of that. It took so long to figure out how to make MySpace Music work for all the stakeholders and from all the financial perspective that the actual platform was less meaningful than ever by the time that the deal was actually done. Nobody, I think, was making any money by that point.
Yeah, so for instance, I know you work with Time Chat a little bit, tiny startup, no pun intended, that, from the ground up went from, I think, 0 to 10 million users in under a year. And I know, there was some celebrity interaction there. How did that look, from somebody that has just a consumer startup?
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with the product and kind of tailoring that product. Like you're trying to, as we got more experience and started kind of, the product started to kind of grow. Like it was really growing organically, to be perfectly honest with you. And the celebrity kind of aspect was kind of almost like a cherry on the top in terms of them, maybe celebrities using it. But it was really a lot of organic growth because the platform is inherently social. So people were sharing this, and it was just, you could go on, as a litmus test, you could go on Twitter and do like a search or whatever, and it's like every minute or 15 seconds, like something was coming up. It was like Time Chat, and it was like, wow, it's like, that's crazy. So I feel like if you build a great product, it's really not a sell for someone to use it, especially if it makes, someone like a celebrity who's going to put their celebrity on the line for something, they don't want to be associated with a product that's shitty, right? So it's like if you build a great product that makes sense, like this is a communication tool or a way to get closer to fans or whatever, people in general. So it kind of made sense, and it was like, oh, okay, this is a great product. These people are using it, and yeah, the first couple of times it might be tough, and that's kind of about relationships. But I think if you have a great product, it's really not different. It's not a hard sell. So.
Makes sense.
And you never had to license any music because it's...
Oh yeah, well it's not music. Yeah.
It's like event-based marketing. It's actually a great way to grow a consumer platform where all it takes is a participation for 30 minutes or an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't want to necessarily get this totally skewed into like celebrity-driven businesses, but I think it is helpful to understand kind of the dynamic of working with celebrities, as they are such a key component of Hollywood. They are the brand in a lot of ways. Some people, you know, the general public doesn't necessarily always associate with CAA or William Morris or Sony Entertainment. It's really, you know, the Ashton Kutchers of the world, the, you know, X, Y, and Z. So, Kaz, I know that your business is specifically focused for pairing, you know, celebrities with games. What are some of these people looking for? Because I think, like, you know, as a general startup, you know, you are making a game, or you're making a brand, you're making some sort of, you know, chat organization. To have a Justin Bieber hop on is obviously like a huge draw. But what does that look like on the reciprocal side? What are the celebrities looking to get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, mobile gaming in particular is just an incredibly hot sector right now. There's just insane growth. You know, it's about a $6 billion industry today, depending on your analyst reports, expected to be 12, 15, 20, depending on your reports. And it's something that I think a lot of people in the traditional Hollywood entertainment community have really woken up to. All of a sudden, you know, everyone is seeing Angry Birds merchandise, and there's a movie in production. The Super Bowl commercial came on last year, where there was, you know, the Angry Birds Rio integration, and it's a huge franchise in the same way a lot of films and television shows have looked to these people for a long time. And a lot of people are saying, well, there's 300 million, 400 million iOS devices in people's hands right now. You know, new iPad comes out and 50 million ship in the first year. Like, that's an amazing number of eyeballs that you can target with one product. Now, there's 700,000 apps in the Apple Store today, and it's hard to cut through that clutter. But I think a lot of celebrities are seeing this as a new platform to introduce characters or stories or worlds or ideas that they're floating around, and, you know, hopefully make some money, and, you know, maybe be a launch form for other types of entertainment mediums like television and film down the line. But it's a lot quicker to get an app into the marketplace than a movie into theater. I don't know, Matt. You know, you had a lot of the ideas, you know, going into why you created this company.
Yeah, well, I'll sort of give how I think about it. The companies that I've seen that successfully leverage celebrity, they've done one of a few approaches. Either they have just an incredible product that people just take to organically. You know, Bieber on Instagram is an example of that. You just love the platform. It made a lot of sense. Great. If you can do that, you probably don't have a lot of, you know, negotiating or biz dev to do. They'll just come to you. Option two is you solve a major problem in the marketplace. So for us, clients weren't thinking about it. They didn't know how to interface with developers. There weren't financing entities out there. We can sell a television show or a film, but there wasn't a place where we could go and get the right economics around games that made sense for the IP rights, that would be simple and easy to negotiate with, that had the right publishing out there. And so we built that and found a great entrepreneur in Matt to help sort of add structure to that. But we think about the same problems in social media. There's a lot of companies out there getting a lot of traction with celebrities by solving their challenges around how do I monetize social media or how do I manage my social media. Those businesses don't have to really go through a challenging biz dev cycle because they're solving an obvious problem. The third is you find somebody who wants to build something from scratch, somebody who's going to be an entrepreneur that you meet in a casual setting, you go out, you find something that you want to build together. And so there are those clients who would say, you know, they meet Brian at dinner, you charm him because he's handsome, and say, I want to be a part of Chill. That happens.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And the fourth is you pay for it. And so that's had mixed results. I think that comes down to the balance of, you know, the other example, sorry, is stuff like what Beachman's done. They're going out there and saying, we're really going to create a co-founding thing together. Brian Lee, I think, has done it perhaps with the best success. And the fourth is you just pay. You say, hey, I want you to come on and endorse X, or I want you to, create a rev share Y. And those are really tricky things to do in the right way, because at the end of the day, it would be like me going to an entrepreneur and saying, hey, I want you to do this, and I'm going to give you X, and I want you to work, if I were a VC, I want you to work 80 hours a week on your startup. And you know what you're going to get. That perverts the entire relationship. You'll never get more than 80 hours a week. You're an employee, you're not an owner. And so the ones that do it successfully make the entrepreneur, make the celebrity feel like a co-founder or feel like they're a part of the process, not just paid for hire. If you ask for X and pay them Y, you're going to get exactly X and no more.
If you're lucky.
if you're lucky.
Eric,
And I will negotiate down on that.
could you talk a little bit? Could you talk a little bit about your business is a little bit more transactional, and so working with large name producers, artists, things like that to help develop younger artists or less well known. What does that kind of relationship look like? What are they looking out of it to get out of it? Is it purely financial?
Yeah, I think there are, when we've gone through kind of signing up and partnering with the labels, the producers, the people like that, particularly early on when we didn't, I think everybody probably who's had to deal with this is, there's kind of a tipping point where, I'm sure that you've encountered some of that, which is after you have kind of partnered with enough celebrities or enough high-level people, there's a level of trust. I think people in entertainment don't like being the first ones to kind of step out. They like seeing other people there first. And I think it's just part of the entertainment, I think it's part of the culture and part of the mentality. When I would go to a producer or a management company, I would try to figure out, well, how is it that we can help them? I think to your, to Matt, can I call you Maz?
I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. To Maz's point, what are some pains that they might be facing, right? And with the kind of decline, the implosion of the traditional record labels, all of the pros that we were talking to wanted to make more money, and they wanted to find new talent, and they couldn't depend on the major record labels to call them up to provide that kind of service for them anymore. So when we approached them, it was really trying to approach, how can we help you? We never approached people saying, hey, we'll pay you, and we were scrappy, we didn't have money. But even if we did, I think it's not a good way to go. I think you got to get them, as Maz was saying, to believe. I mean, I think they have to feel like it's something that they're really going to benefit from. And once you get one person to believe, they recommend 3 others. And when you go to them, you can say, hey, this person's already signed on. I mean, this is like the Hollywood, this is like the movie thing, right? So-and-so's attached, and this guy's going to be attached pretty soon. And you kind of build momentum that way. And once we got to a certain point, it became incredibly easy to do new deals. But I think you have to start from a place of, how do you help them? What are their pains?
So I think we're talking a lot about, high-level celebrity, working with entertainment, but I think the question on everybody's mind, or at least mine, is that, it's great if you have those relationships. Where do you get them? I mean, if everybody in this room wants to do a biz dev deal with CAA, Maz, you only have a couple hours a day. But what I would like to get out of you guys is more, we can all go to events, we can all try to network our asses off, but what's a hack for getting into or getting relationships in the Hollywood space? How to cultivate it, or a funny story of you guys kind of early on doing that. Kaz, you have a giant grin on your face, so we'll start with you.
That's a tough, I mean, for everyone, I think it's different, and it grows organically out of individuals. I can say personally, I went to college with Matt. I got a great job out of.
That is an awful example.
My first job out of Bain & Company, a consulting firm, was at Yahoo doing media and entertainment strategy, where I met some incredible tech entrepreneurs who were very well connected in the entertainment community here in LA, who introduced me to some people who helped me get my first job, who helped me get our first deals launched. It's just sort of, each relationship builds on itself, and you have to know what you're talking about, or else, when you meet someone, it's not going to mean anything. You have to have a product that person cares about, or they're not going to want to do business with you. So, it's kind of a confluence of the network, the understanding of the market that you're trying to attack, and the communication of that confidence in how you're going to do it, and having a great product to offer the person, and then just being really easy to work with. If you're a diva, it's going to be hard for you to do a really important deal with someone who is very well known and has a lot to lose if they don't do a good deal. And you can't screw up their reputation. You have to be really, really good at realizing the risks and sensitivities that a celebrity has, and working to accommodate those and make them successful at the end of the day. Whether that's launching a great product with their name on it or making them a lot of money.
I think the main point of this is that you don't go directly to the celebrity though. Who do you talk to?
I think a broad point about this, because I think this is what's sort of really strange right now. The world has changed. What's changed is 6 years ago, let's sort of reverse course and say MySpace at its zenith. People realized, wow, I have a distribution channel now. I can send a bulletin out. And as arcane and terrible as that tool was, it made people realize it is important that I build my footprint. And so I think we're thinking about all these crazy tools and we hear about everything, but there's really only two things celebrities use organically today, and that's Twitter and Instagram. And I think that no one here in this room actually believes that everything they see is these celebrities. Let's first start with that. Celebrities being mechanized, and it really is sort of like a post-industrial revolution in digital. There are entire companies, with millions of dollars in funding, and their principal job is increasing edge rank and figuring out how to get more retweets and more velocity in the Twitter sphere. There always is room for other tools because these people now understand the utility and the value of this social channel, but I think what everyone has to understand is this is becoming a real business. This isn't just like, hey, let me slide 100 underneath the door and maybe we can get a favor now. These are legitimate venture-funded businesses that are looking to control this distribution channel. I think everyone here is speaking the same language. Unless you solve a problem or come in very professionally, no one's going to listen because this train has left the station. I mean, some of these guys, it's unpublished, but are making tens of millions of dollars through social media today. And I just think we should say what it is because this is a professional business. Social media is no longer just a place where you're taking camera pics.
But I think all of that's right. I think having a great idea. I think the one thing that people really have to understand, particularly entrepreneurs and particularly anybody that comes from like a development, hacking kind of environment, the hacking, the entrepreneurial environment, the lean startup environment, it's very much a meritocracy. It's very much about the product. What did you do today? What did you do? Entertainment is not like that. Entertainment is not a meritocracy. Look at the Grammys. Look at. It's not a meritocracy. It's based on people and it's based on who you know. It's fundamentally operated on a different set of rules. And so I think I've seen a lot of people, particularly that come from kind of the entrepreneurial space, say, well, I have an amazing idea. I have an amazing idea.
McClure was here last time, you're fine.
That's true. Compared to Dave McClure, I'm here. So I think that you really have to be able to, you've got to be able to get in with the right people. And I think getting, for instance, what Brian did, you've got to create relationships. And I think Brian's absolutely right.
The guys that I met with, that I consummated the first deal with Chill, these weren't actually the decision makers. These are the creatives behind what's happening in social media. We said, pitch something, and it went up a channel, and about 5 of our deals, if we push 10 across the table, 5 get bounced back. Right. But there's a relationship here saying it's a win-win. We're all sort of benefiting because they're getting visibility, building a footprint. I'm getting visibility. Everyone feels pretty good about it, and also they can say to me, "That's a really dumb fucking idea, Brian. We can't do that."
Right, but it came through that relationship. In other words, to your point, you never go straight to the celebrity. You're always dealing with management. You're dealing with the agent. You're dealing with someone creative that's working with them, and you've got to kind of work your way up the chain. You don't go straight to the top. And I think a lot of people that come from the kind of development community feel like, I've got a great idea. Look at this business model. Look at my projections. The merit of the idea is phenomenal. But it doesn't work like that in entertainment. You don't just walk in the door to the celebrity and say, look at this amazing business plan. Here's how much you could make. This is why it could change the world. They just are not programmed to work that way. I mean, and by the way, we've seen it with our own platform. So within Music 180, we give upcoming artists direct access to high-level producers and publishers. We have people try to make those introductions themselves. I'll have an artist come on and get some amazing feedback from some producer or from a management company, and they won't do anything with them. But if I call that manager and say, there's an amazing talent, you really should check them out. Oh, really? Who is it? I mean, it's very much a people business. Maz can speak to that.
Yeah, I'll add to that just that, when approaching any artist in the entertainment industry, know that they are in fact a business in their own right. And just like any startup, they have their own priorities, their own objectives. And if anybody's gotten advice at the start, I guarantee one of those lessons is stay focused, stay on their course, really keep the train moving ahead in the direction you planned on. There's going to be distractions everywhere. Stay focused on that. Celebrities are much the same way. They have their own focus, their own strategy, their own plan. And you as a startup might have the best plan for them, but you might not have any of the context into where that brand is going. In addition, Matt mentioned earlier, there's a lot of brand risk there. You know, these people, you as an entrepreneur can launch a dozen startups. One fails, screw it on to the next one. This is their business. This is their brand, and a lot of them are tied to that for their entire lives. There are other things at risk. One bum deal, one bad movie, one bad X, and each decision is weighed with the entirety of that client's career. And so they are inherently risk averse. You have to find ones presented in the right context who are entrepreneurial, as Brian was saying, to get anything done, and have to be aware that it's not just about going to celebrity and getting an answer, because there's a team of other people. There's a CFO, there's a lawyer, there's like a dozen people surrounding a lot of these clients with their own agendas, their own strategies, and their own things that have been in motion from the beginning before you had the idea that was incredible for them.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking to that, you will see that of all the people on Twitter with 10 to 30 million followers and all the people on Facebook with over 30 million, 40 million likes, there aren't official deals in place for that. So people will follow the place that has success. It's actually easier to do an unpapered deal, to give whatever you're putting onto Facebook and just use the Twitter platform, because you know that that's where your audience is, than it is to jump out and take that risk to try to build a new platform and a new
It
audience.
was like when records were coming out and everyone was putting, instead of the website link, everyone sort of put their MySpace link on the back of the record instead. And I thought that was really an interesting thing when that shift happened. But I think, relationships aside, like one thing I would say is that, a lot of companies that come through or whatever, they're very because we do a lot in the music space, they're very music focused. But if you think about the companies that you just mentioned, like Instagram, whatever, Facebook, Twitter, those are all not music companies, and those are probably the most used by every single artist that I work with in entertainment or what have you. So, a lot of these, the very specific music companies, I think they become very focused on one thing. When you think of, what's actually being used, a lot of those companies, I don't know, in my opinion, aren't very used by the community. It's all these other tools that are really connecting them with an outside world instead of like an insular world. But that's something that I had to realize.
I'll add one more thing if you don't mind, Matt, which is just that these artists are also getting approached all the time. You see that artist out there, you're like, this person's perfect for X. You're probably one of 100 other people who have said the exact same thing about that artist. And they have very few filters to go by, right? They don't probably know you don't have a track record necessarily. Those, the things that we look for are same thing that VCs look for. Track record, other investors, what have you funded before? How does the project look? Are they the first to move? All those things impact the decision making of the representatives who are seeing a dozen of these, daily, especially as people are trying to capitalize upon that publishing network that's effectively been built up overnight across Facebook and Twitter for these artists. And so you have to keep that in mind as well. You have to be really specific, tailor your pitch. It can't just be sort of spray and pray.
Yeah, so I think that tails perfectly into what I'd like to talk about next, which is celebrity investors or entertainment brands being investors. So you see, everybody from Troy Carter, who's Lady Gaga's manager, to Ashton Kutcher and Guy Oseary, doing deals left and right in the tech space. It's kind of like the new hit thing to invest in tech startups. Is it actually helpful, or do you find it more of just kind of like this wanker sort of thing where, oh, hey, I have Ashton Kutcher as my investor?
I should take this one. Troy Carter is one of my investors, and he's been extremely helpful. But I think there was an organic connection with what we were trying to do and who we are and kind of how we think about the world. And he said, take some risks. I'm going to give you some line. We'll try some things, and we promised that we would probably get most of it wrong, but we would come back with a few answers, and we take those answers and try something new. And that's why he's phenomenal and world-class at probably what he does with Gaga. I have no idea what he does with Gaga, but the results speak for themselves. So I think it's totally dependent on the person, and I've been approached by countless different celebrities, and I felt like culturally it was the wrong fit. So I think you have to look at the track record, but you also have to look at the true sort of curiosity of that person. And some of these celebrities too, I mean, let's be honest, Ashton is in some amazing deals. He's provided a ton of value, and I know guys who said that they've gotten 3 pages of product notes from him. So, some people have been critical, but I think net, I mean, we saw what he did on 2.5 Men with those stickers. I mean, people are still talking about that. But I think really the next vista is finding the next Ashton Kutcher. Who is the next Ashton Kutcher? I mean, we should ask you guys. Matt, is it?
Well, it's funny. I mean,
I'd like to know.
Yeah, you've been seeing a lot of this. I think to your point, it's like it all comes down to the fit, right? The same questions you'd have for a VC. Are you really going to put effort into mine? Do you understand my business? Are you passionate about me as an entrepreneur? Those things matter more than just getting dumb money. There's a lot of dumb money floating out there. And so similarly, from an artist, there's celebrities who are looking at this as an asset class that they've never seen, both from one that is fun and exciting, maybe more exciting than the mutual funds that they've been investing in for years, and also one where they can leverage their network to more effect, right? They have this promotional platform. Celebrities ask me all the time, where should we be putting our cash? And I say, chill. But after that, I say...
He's one of the best agents in the world.
But after that, I say, the only way that you should approach this marketplace is a diversified approach. This is risk capital that you're putting at work. And so those artists who say, Matt, I want to put $1 million into X. My advice is almost entirely no. I don't care how awesome that company is. The only way to do this is in a professional manner. You have to have somebody professional managing your money, or you have to take it upon yourself to really learn this space. Ashton and Troy are scholars at this. They've gone up to Silicon Valley, and Guy as well. They've gone up and spent the time. They've done the due diligence because they were passionate about it. An artist just throwing cash in there is a losing bet unless you do it with professionals or in a diversified way. And so I think you'll see more artists and more people try to fill that middleman spot of finding high net worth individuals from every asset, from every area of the economy, but celebrities as well in the next few years to invest in a diversified. Jared's a client and is extraordinary.
I got to sit down with him 2 weeks ago. I couldn't believe it. He has more interest in technology than he is in and everything except music. He had more people working at his tech startup than mine. I'm not kidding. The house is filled with people coding.
I'm staring at Susan, who works really closely with Jared, and Susan and a colleague of ours took him up to Silicon Valley not too long ago to really experience that day and have an entire day of really meeting the best entrepreneurs and VCs and tech companies. But there's no question they want to learn this space.
Abe, what do you see, Guy or Siri helping on the day-to-day? I mean, how do you guys pitch, Ashton or Guy's value add in that regard?
Well, I mean, it really comes down to the individual. Like, Ashton and Guy are just obsessed about tech. Like, they get the space, so, you're saying a lot of money that's floating around, like, it really comes down to the individual and how they they get it. They spend a lot of time, like you were saying, like, they'll give, like, very detailed notes. Like, they're very involved. Like, they really want to help, and it's not just, with Ashton putting stickers on a computer or whatever like that. Like, he's very, like, he wants to help, and he understands how to do that.
But there was a risk in that.
CBS
was not happy about that.
No, well,
he went out on a limb for companies that he believed in, which is amazing.
It's cool.
Every entrepreneur's dream.
No, it was great publicity. But I mean, deeper than that, I think it's like the value that those people can give to those companies rather than just the public celebrity element. You're actually, when you have someone like that involved who's on your team, it's the involvement and what they're going to bring to it. Like, it's the smarts, just like you would have any other advisor or what have you. So that's what I see a lot of. I mean, they're very focused on those things.
Rob, has Bruno made any investments?
No, Bruno's not made any like seed or type, venture type investments directly. It's a space that he and Brandon and everybody, I think, who have made a career out of understanding creativity and the processes of creation and the way that creating music or film or art like that can scale in a way that is unencumbered by anything but the size of your distribution pipeline. They realize that there is a scale and a business that comes out of the digital space, and in the Instagram being an amazing example, and I'm sure it's being talked about in every celebrities back rooms. It's wow. Well, we had a bunch of content that we put onto this. We're part of what made it successful, and it was an incredibly lucrative investment. Obviously, it's just one example, but there is the sense that the creativity behind finding that talent and nurturing that talent isn't in a lot of ways so different from finding and nurturing creative talent. There's a lot of female singers between the ages of 16 and 25 who want to get a record deal, and there's certain characteristics of the ones who do get those record deals, and a big part of it is things like trusting the team, trusting the person, trusting that they're going to be able to get the work done. So I think that for people like I work with, I think it's something that we want to get involved in very soon, and we're out there doing events like this because we're passionate about this space, because there is that I think there are a lot of parallels that make us excited, and it is a chance for diversification, and hopefully in an intelligent way for any of the celebrities involved.
Awesome. So before we open it up for questions, I just want to go quickly down the line, 30 seconds each. Where is Hollywood going? We've heard Paul Graham say, Star's going to kill Hollywood. That's kind of the goal. I think we'll hear a variety of angles from this, but I'd love to start, Brian, because I think you have a great
I don't
idea.
have 30 seconds, but it can take about 30 years. I think the notion of kill Hollywood is extremely naive. I think if you understand what Hollywood is, it's a constituency of all these disconnected pieces. But underneath it is this sort of beautiful framework of story, and that's not going anywhere. But where I see the world going is, I'll give you some sort of concrete stuff that's not theoretical. I think that distribution is changing remarkably. We used to have all these windows. We used to have all these crazy licensing rights, as you know, we've just discussed in music. I think a lot of this stuff is going to go to sort of very simplistic levels, because now celebrities actually have a true audience. It's not direct to consumer, that's a bit of a lie, because there's still a platform in between. But when you start looking at these numbers and you start looking at what's coming online, it's not crazy to think that Gaga could have 200 million fans on Facebook at some point. It's not crazy that some of these athletes could have 25 million people following them. And there will be channels to monetize this content, this audience. Monetization always lags audience. And I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see some incredible opportunities for artists to be hyper-independent. And we look at Louis C.K., look at this Aziz Ansari, comedy bit that was just released. This is just the start. And it's going to happen in a lot of different genres. And I think that great entrepreneurs and agents, people are going to have to be extremely flexible, because when this happens, it's going to happen violently. We're still going to see tentpole movies. We're still going to be, watching American Idol. But by and large, I think the entertainment industry is going to go into, much more frictionless channels, and it's going to simplify dramatically. And I think in the end, the consumer wins. We're going to get it on every device, and we're going to have a lot of fun consuming content whenever, wherever we want. It's going to be an interesting time.
I just took all of your time. No, it was great.
More than 30 seconds. I appreciate it.
So now I have no time. Hollywood's fun. I don't think. Look, Hollywood's not. I agree with everything that Brian said. Hollywood is not going to die. Tech people need storytellers, and Hollywood is filled with great storytellers, and content is still king. And having said that, the way that consumers interact with celebrities and with content and these consumer demands, we're kind of past the point of no return, right? Technology will continue to innovate. As we saw with the record labels back when Napster came out, closing your eyes and plugging your ears really isn't going to work well for Hollywood. So I think Hollywood now, especially with the younger generations, is much more open to working with technology. They're much more, it's not perfectly synergistic yet, but it's getting there. And I think we're getting to a place where both tech needs Hollywood and Hollywood needs tech.
I think Brian said it phenomenally well. I think that Hollywood is a constituency of sort of three things: the creatives, the capital, and the distribution. And what you've seen in the last 5 years is sort of a seismic shift towards the creatives actually owning the distribution and monetization piece as well through these platforms. And what you're starting to see through things like crowdfunding and microfinance and different financiers entering the marketplace, the Jobs Act in particular, you're seeing sort of a liberation of the capital piece from these structures that existed with huge sort of middlemen and overhead. And a lot of that is shifting towards the talent as well. They are the ones that have the distribution, and thus the fans can dictate what they want to finance. A guy like Glenn Beck can go from making $2 million a year on Fox to making 10x that direct distribution to his fan base. And what you're going to see is a far more efficient allocation of capital and far more efficient sort of offering the fans exactly what they want, when they want it, and paying. I don't necessarily believe that windowing is dead, but what you'll see is tiered pricing. I think if anything, things like Kickstarter show us that. And things like social gaming have shown us that there are super fans who will pay more for better experiences. And historically, Hollywood's priced itself terribly inefficiently. If I'm a diehard Twilight fan, I go out and wait 3 days in line. I pay $15 just like Matt, who gets dragged there by his fiancé. That's not an efficient allocation of pricing. He's like saying somebody who wants to fly first class, getting coach. we'll see better pricing models and a more efficient flushing of the distribution system as well. Boom.
He likes Twilight.
I think it's going to be a slower process than what it should be, but because it always seems to be that way. But you even go to like these different companies where the digital marketing departments are still fairly small and their budgets are dwarfed by everything else that's going on. So at some point, hopefully that maybe it's grown, but I think it'll continue to grow, hopefully at a faster rate than it has been. But I'd also say, like, we bring up a lot of these direct-to-consumer, like these big Louis C.K. or any of these other artists, but they were all built on huge platforms. So when you hear bands or other people, they're like, oh, we're going to do this thing, it'll be direct, it'll be this, it'll be like, it's all to get to that level, or even like a Gaga, when you have an Interscope who's pushing this artist or what have you, you need. It's hard to launch someone to that stratosphere.
Everyone has to start somewhere.
True, but
Yeah.
still, yeah. I get it, but I think you need that back end because everyone will harp on labels, harp on like Hollywood, like oh god, but they build these brands or whatever you want to call them. And I know you've seen it too. At the labels, so yeah.
Yeah, I think content is king, but content has a marketing problem, and historically that's been served by people who control the distribution channels because the distribution and the marketing were so closely tied together. As that's getting disentangled, it's harder to build new content sources into people who can do a Louis C.K. model. That took 25 years of working at NBC as a writer and making movies that were put out by studios and Showtime specials and Comedy Central, FX. There's lots of corporate money and corporate expertise behind this. I think what we do see, what I do see coming is changes in the nature of intellectual property. Maybe not law, but the way that intellectual property is handled from a business perspective, because it has to recognize how much more flexible consumers are. And you need to have faster speed to market. When you see, even if a record company has 5% of its employees doing digital marketing, even if it's 25%, you could put out a single by an Interscope artist named Carly Rae Jepsen, who Justin Bieber tweets about, and who in the first 3 weeks of release sells 300,000 copies. That is 100% digital revenue. So whether the marketing, all marketing is digital related because people are consuming content in digital ways. I think there's a lot of weird disintermediation that's got to happen in terms of the entrenched power structures and intellectual property structures too.
I'll try to be very brief on this person, and I know you all have wonderful questions. I'll just open it with a question mark. The whole landscape can change on a dime. I'm in the mobile game landscape. 4 years ago, the iPad didn't exist. It was an entirely new marketplace. The growth of celebrity-backed e-commerce businesses is relatively new. Honest.com, Jessica Alba's new company, raised $23 million, I think, this month. Like, that's an incredibly new, cool opportunity for celebrities. And is Hollywood dead? I hate massive overgeneralizations. Who watched Hunger Games? Like, almost everyone's hand should probably go up. But the flip side to that is they released a mobile game with one dude. He's this single game developer who made a game called Cannibal, like an indie game designer. They launched his game simultaneously, actually 2 weeks before the movie, but it went neck and neck with Angry Birds Space. And they were battling pole position in the charts for like 2 weeks, which is really cool. So, there is a lot of sort of echoes between the indie communities and the mainstream communities. And I think one of the really exciting things for us to be thinking about as entrepreneurs in LA is how we can swim along with those big fish and try and get bigger with them. I don't know. I'll end with that metaphor.
So I'm getting pinged on Twitter constantly with questions. So I think we're going to open it up for questions right now. I'm going to say up front, please ask questions. We're not looking for statements or pitches. If you want to pitch these guys after, by all means. And while you have the microphone in front of everybody, please ask a question. All right. Let's go over here.
You mentioned the new Jobs Act, which has built into it the ability, like basically new Reg A rules that allow you to raise your own funding. Is that what you're referring to when you talk about vast changes in terms of ways to raise capital? You should raise up to $1 million without filing papers with the SEC and stuff. You want to talk more about that?
No, I think it's fascinating. Historically you had how many major studios there were. If you take film financing, right? You had X number of studios, you had X number of independent financiers, and X squared number of accredited investors entering the space. But how many fans are there of content creators that would love to fund, whether it's a film or an album release? And so you're unlocking these niche communities to be authors. I mean, if social media is anything, it's about sort of helping individuals participate in the conversation. Now it's not only participating in the conversation, but funding that conversation and having return against that. I think that unlocks a whole new group of investors who will do it same way that people want to own shares of the Green Bay Packers just because they're diehard fans. And so that's an interesting new door that we've sort of opened up. And I think, especially with the entertainment space, and absolutely within the VC space, is starting a whole new wave of excitement around how to raise funds.
I think just look at Kickstarter. I mean, over the past week, I think the first project crossed $3.3 million in under 10 days. It's incredible, the distribution platform that you have to direct to. The Pebble Watch. Video games, movies, they're all being, crowdfunded by the masses. It's, a direct-to-consumer kind of play, but in a lot of regards, they never had that democratized, vote to get something done.
And I think the Jobs Act will impact that by just allowing you now, instead of just getting a perk in return, to actually own a piece of that, and not whether it's optically owning a piece or actually seeing a return. You're going to see both of those things sort of take off.
Over the past decade or so, we saw the music industry get sort of crippled by digital media, free media, piracy, all that has changed an entire industry behemoth. The startup world is starting to really explode and proliferate. It's getting easier and easier to start a company, similar to it being easier and easier to create and move music, which changed that entire industry. Just being a panel on Hollywood and business mixed together, do you see the boom in startups out there changing the landscape of investment as it relates to Hollywood? I mean, you think about Instagram sold for $1 billion and didn't make any money. They didn't have much revenue at all, and they're still worth $1 billion. Does value mean something different than dollars now, especially in the case of Hollywood and what it means for a celebrity?
I mean, value is what someone will pay for your company. Withdraw something worth $210 million to Zynga. It was if it was a huge threat to them, taking over the #1 position on Facebook and cutting into their core audience, and it would make them more money under their own umbrella. So I think you need to look at exits in the context of who's buying. But in terms of the celebrity angle, again, it's what's the value to you as a celebrity? Is this going to enhance my platform? Is this a good investment for me? I don't know. I think every company is a snowflake, and every investment decision, exit decision, partnership decision depends on the company. And
that will be selling T-shirts.
I'll bring that up tomorrow. I'll definitely bring that up. Somebody quote him.
Can everybody please tweet? What other questions?
I'll stand by that.
Can you hear me? Really interesting company, Maker Studios, one of the more exciting companies, I think, in LA. You guys talk about this idea, and we've talked a lot about celebrities today, kind of a new class of celebrities that, can do it quicker, and, you sing a song like Chocolate Rain, and you're somewhat eccentric, and all of a sudden you generate that much interest and that many eyeballs.
CAA represents a ton of incredible, the new breed of celebrities. Which
I want to differentiate between sort of the viral video star and somebody like Michelle. We represent Michelle Phan, Phil DeFranco, Kevin Wu, the Young Turks, a handful of others who have built real careers. I think it speaks more to the fact that there's a new skill, sort of just as there was an evolution from the silent film star to the talkie. There's sort of an evolution now from the creator to the creator and audience manager. And there are these people who built those hybrid skills. And so at once they are creating the content on the fly, the economies that make sense for the web, but also just as skilled at managing that audience, right? And so people like the ones I've just named are incredible savants. Similarly, I'd say Zynga's skill is not necessarily in creating games, but in engaging and managing and spreading audience. And so I think there's a parallel between those two. And companies like Maker are teaching those skills that matter and providing the resources that matter in that space. Similarly, Fullscreen and a handful of other tech companies are doing it from a very different perspective. But there's a whole new world of skills that you need, whether it be light production or SEO ability or anything to manage audience. Equal, I think, is another company that's, again, nicely, a lot of these are LA-based startups just because we're closest to the content community that are really taking over the space.
Yeah, I've been representing Fullscreen for probably about 6 months now, and looking at kind of talking with those guys and seeing what they're doing. There are a lot of companies making a lot more sense out of, in other words, YouTube content kind of blew up and you get a lot of people engaging, but a lot of companies like Fullscreen and Maker that are making a lot more sense out of kind of the management, the monetization, how do you actually turn it into a real business and not just be kind of this, loose aggregation of content. And I think it's a legitimate addition in terms of new content, new talent that doesn't come up through the traditional Hollywood ranks. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I think on a profitability standpoint, it remains to be seen whether Vivo is going to do the same thing in the music industry, but they realized that there was a sales problem for the valuable content that they were distributing largely through YouTube, so they took the sales job away from YouTube and started selling it themselves. I think that represents the same kind of understanding that the content has amazing amounts of value, and when it can reach that many eyeballs, even though the CPMs are totally different compared to TV, you can actually own that now. And it was a pretty bold and brave move of the people who started Vivo to do that. And it might not work. It might not be as much of a scalable business as they want it to be. But I think it's important to recognize that value of content in that way.
Cool. Let's go back in the middle.
Okay. My question has to do with we've talked a lot about music distribution, and it sort of seems to me that the tech world, in the sense of Google and YouTube, is actually confronting Hollywood directly by funding original programming and sort of disrupting that means of how people get their TV content as opposed to just TV. Just wondered what you thought, if any of you have thoughts about the future of TV production.
So, I think that's television means a lot of things to a lot of people. So I think that first we should sort of contextualize, what does television represent? Well, when you sit down, you just want to be entertained. And I think that it's been a challenge getting, we'll call it web video, onto the television, but that's quickly changing. We have 300 million connected TVs coming online, 100 million iPads. I think what you're going to see is sort of a new generation of customer. You guys are all familiar with the term cord cutter. I think it's totally irrelevant. I don't actually believe in it. I think people who love cable are going to die with cable. But I think there's a 30 and under class of customer that just doesn't care. They never had cable TV. If they want to watch a game, they're going to go to a bar or a friend's house. But they're still going to get their 4.4 hours in somewhere. And that 4.4 hours is probably going to be internet video. It's going to probably be on iPads, on phones, potentially connected TVs, Xboxes, Rokus, Apple TVs. I think the whole ecosystem is in play today, but it's also a really, really tough place to kind of put your sort of finger on the pulse because there's so much entrenched competition. Comcast isn't giving up anything. Rupert isn't giving up anything. So there's really kind of two worlds that are emerging, and I think you're going to see this incredible innovation on one side, and the other side is going to look like an old sort of dinosaur. But it's still going to be a cash-producing dinosaur. But at the end, I think the interesting thing is customers will inevitably get what they want. And if there's amazing innovation on this other side, imagine if you could wake up and you could have the most amazing piece of content just find you. It's just somehow magically got to you. It's on your screen. You go to the next piece. It's even better. If that technology exists, I think you're going to see a massive, massive exodus from cable.
One of the most exciting areas within entertainment that I've seen in a long time is transmedia. So there are kind of entire organizations, there are groups built around transmedia, where I think the first level of kind of going onto the net was, TV programming, other programming, saying, hey, watch this and then go online and do X, or go to your mobile device and do Y. But I think what we're seeing now is a lot more content producers creating content that truly leverages and utilizes the unique properties of mobile devices and tablets, as well as things online, as well as television. That's where I, at least over the last year, have seen the most kind of innovative thinking going on kind of like on the production, on the creative production side, has been on the transmedia side. And it's not big yet, but over the coming years, it's about to get really huge.
I don't think this pattern's any different from what we've seen historically. You end up, there's always going to be certain pieces of content that are either must watch or must see, and certain people will pay when they're trying to build an entire business model or entire platform. Those platforms will pay for that exclusive content. So, when Sirius is launching their new subscription radio service, they will overpay Howard Stern because they know he brings an audience. And so there's this level of sort of customer acquisition that comes with the exclusive content, right? And so you're seeing Netflix go down that path right now and saying, hey, there are a lot of platforms that are all competing. They all have this basic stuff. They're all getting these film libraries. We're going to need to differentiate by overpaying for certain things, and it's just built into the cost of customer acquisition over time. And there are other economies that come with that, like building library and value and stuff. But at this point, they're just thinking about it like, we've built the platform. How do we differentiate from competitors in the marketplace? One way that's always existed is get exclusive content or must-see content. There's only a handful of those, which is why you're seeing the rights go through the roof for regional sports networks, why you're seeing the rights go through the roof for things like World Cup and the Olympics, because you need to have those. Or you're seeing the prices go through the roof for things like the top creators and showrunners, because they are distinguishable, and that is scarce, and there are audiences that come with that and will buy Hulu Plus because it's getting a new original program, or buy Netflix because they want House of Cards because people are talking about it. The same way that Mad Men drove value for AMC. Those platforms will see the same increase in value by licensing exclusive original content.
Right, and also it's because content is still has its own scarcity. You're going to be able to, the people who own content are still going to be able to kind of put the screws to the people who control those platforms by asking Netflix for more money the next time they re-up. You could say that that's what Vivo did to YouTube. And so funding the original content that you have a little more control over protects your platform in a lot of ways.
Hi, my name is John Fries. I work for YouTube in the Venice office, and internally, YouTube is incredibly tech focused, and the relationship with Hollywood proper is Hollywood seems very opaque actually when you're working within YouTube, and it's unclear. Like there's a deep desire to partner with Hollywood, but it's unclear how to do that. Like how to make that interface stronger. And so I guess my question for you is, as a representative of sort of like LA Tech and YouTube in particular, like how can LA Tech, build that partnership with Hollywood more effectively? Like, in terms of like, we've got space, we've got, engineering, we've got, eyeballs, but like, what is the ideal interface that you as Hollywood would want to find within like LA Tech? Like how can we build stuff that you guys can use more effectively?
Speak for Hollywood.
We all unilaterally.
That's Hollywood.
From my perspective, you guys are Hollywood.
Yeah, I would
Each
say,
one of you are a snowflake.
It's frankly ironic that someone from YouTube's asking a question. I think you guys have done probably the most incredible job in the last year. I worked through a number of regime changes there, from Jordan Hoffner to George Stropoulos, who was there for a number of years, and now this current regime run by Solar and Kinsel have done a phenomenal job of engaging Hollywood, and I think put out a real sort of call to arms to get original content creators thinking about the platform, and their entire funding initiative, as challenging as that was to go through on the first run, has done a phenomenal job of engaging talent in my building and content creators across the agency, and agents and managers and lawyers, and thinking about YouTube as a platform. And you've engaged by hiring phenomenal and seasoned veterans. Malik Descartes, Jamie Byrne, Alex Carlos are all, they know this industry. They know all the sort of paths to the minds in the fields, and so they've really been phenomenal Sherpas for your brand as you guys have engaged with entertainment. So I think it comes from understanding the landscape and finding great executives and making hires of people who've experienced agencies and management firms and know this complex web of relationships. And you guys have done as good a job as anybody, at least in the last couple of years.
Okay. So I know you guys have tens, if not hundreds, of ideas every day for new business, new service, way to improve your own company, whatever. How do you prioritize amongst all of those ideas, and do you have to pick one and run with it, or can you have multiple things going at one time?
I've tried a combination of everything. A multiple, single, sort of thinking about one thing, doing another. Focus is everything. It really is. And I think in Hollywood, people are going to smell the fact that you're disjointed. But I think if how you prioritize, I mean, everyone here said the same thing. Solve a problem, focus on something differentiated. I mean, we ask ourselves every day in our product meetings, why does someone matter about it? Why does someone care? Why does this feature matter? How does it stand out above the noise? And I think these are just, tried and true principles that will take you through, a career in business. No one wants a duplicative product. And it's very challenging. It's very easy to be incremental, but, that's why this is an awesome game.
Yeah, and I think just talking at a high level, something that we might not have mentioned explicitly, a lot of things in Hollywood take a long, long time to get done. I've been working on Chromatic for about 1.5 years, and we're starting to get, just starting to get traction with publishers, just starting to get traction with a number of, entertainment brands. I think one of the things that you have to think about in terms of prioritizing your business is trying to figure out what, obviously, the minimum viable product is. How do you get it out the door? How do you get users engaged with it? But then on top of that, what's your long tail? How does it grow? And a lot of what we're talking about, celebrities, investment, these are things that put rocket fuel in your company. They're not the company itself in the majority of cases. And so you have to think about these things as a lot of additives in a lot of ways. It's a long tail. You have to prioritize how you look at it with the big picture and understand that, you'll start today and you'll get a deal done a year later in a lot of cases. I think we have one back there.
Yeah, I have a question. You had a great question earlier, the gentleman from
Chromatic. I'm bad with names, I'm sorry. But you had a question earlier about how do you get to the decision maker, which I think is really critical, because you can have the greatest idea in the world, but unless you can get to that person, you're kind of screwed. So I wanted to, if you can expound a little bit on that question. Brian, you mentioned that you hosted dinners to get chill off the ground with different creatives and so forth. I mean, what are some of, you had a lot of companies in the past. Can you expound upon some of the creative ways that you've got to that decision maker to create that company? So maybe specifically targeted for you as well as Maz. What are some creative stories that people have gotten to you and broken through the layers of creatives and so forth?
So, I think that one thing that if I was sitting in the crowd, I would be sitting here going, shit, there's a lot of decision makers and this is really hard and wow, this sounds impossible. I got to know all these people. I do believe there's back doors, but you have to be really creative. And so what I would do if I was in your shoes and I wanted to interface with a celebrity is I would start to think about really, really sort of hacking into this world. Who is publishing in high frequency? It's using lots of tools. It's clear it's an organic voice. Think about ways in which you can actually get in front of someone who is actually using technology. And so we've done it multiple times. And I'll tell you our back door, and Matt will probably hate that I'm going to offer this one up. Every celebrity has a friend, a brother, an uncle, a turtle, a cousin. Every one of them has this person. And it takes a lot of work. You have to go to a lot of bars and a lot of clubs and talk to a lot of people. But inevitably you will find someone who knows someone that knows someone that will take you to a birthday party and they will get on your platform. We've done it literally, I don't want to say hundreds of times, but probably easily middle double digits. And I'll tell you, every single time, it's the same type of person. There are these people that hang out with celebrities that are connectors. They morph. There's female versions, male versions, but they know all these people. They can quickly get to them, and magic can happen. I mean, I've literally onboarded 15 celebrities in 3 days. I don't know how it happened. It was one guy who I couldn't track down because I thought he was dead. Inevitably, he came to my door one day and he said, go look at the platform. I hadn't been logged in because it was a dev server. And I said, they're on the dev server. They're not even on the production platform. And he's had to go back and do it again. And so the lesson learned here is if you are creative, I mean, listen, you're never going to get to Madonna. you're never going to get to Ashton. Let's this is rarefied air. But there's a lot of B celebrities out there that are just hanging out, that are speaking organically. And there are ways to find them, but you've got to be an entrepreneur about it.
I rely on Abe. Abe filters everybody for me, and I trust his opinion.
You are going to be one popular man.
No, it's totally different every time, right? Part of the job is to have a wide network of people who bring opportunities to clients, and could come direct through a client. Invariably, there's a decision maker, at some level, and invariably that's a group of decision makers. Unfortunately, for the entrepreneur who's looking for a quick yes or no.
We're not going to go on TV for you guys. I mean, let's be honest. There's going to be, no announcement in the New York Times, but there are opportunities for people. I mean, I don't want to name the celebrities because it would be disrespectful, but some of the biggest celebrities in the world have just shown up this way. And I think it's because someone was really, really creative about how they approached them, and it wasn't me. And there are these people, and Matt knows them. They bring lots of opportunities into the door to really professional organizations.
Yeah, I would say if you think that you need that before you can build what it is that you want to build, then you're thinking about things the wrong way. That's an important point. And that, managers, some celebrities, people at CAA read all the tech blogs now. It's a function of the stuff we were talking about earlier, with how it's really a space that it's generating a lot of interest. That's a good way to get the attention of people, and that could generate inbound phone calls, depending on how exciting your idea really seems to the people who are close to celebrities, who really understand that world. So build something great, and you might get that inbound attention.
It almost reminds me of when we worked at a label or whatever, and bands would be like, how do I get signed? I'm awesome. Why aren't I signed? And it's well, either you're probably not, or you should probably, or you should probably how many shows have you played? Maybe you should play a couple hundred shows. Get your own shit together. And I promise you people will hear about you. Just like he was saying, we read everything. That's part of my job. I have to know about, everything that's going on. So that we'll find, and to be honest with you, that probably gives you more leverage if someone's calling you than you're trying to seek someone else out. But
I think it's a great job.
Every celebrity is a snowflake.
You
go all the way in the back of the room.
I think you guys did a great presentation here, but I thought the conversation kind of narrows down to around getting access to celebrities. And I feel like there's more to Hollywood than just getting access to celebrities and licensing their content or getting their investments. As a tech representative, let's say, where do you guys see, you being Hollywood, where do you guys see yourselves in 5 years' time in relationship with technology, given that technology has been one of the drivers of how your business models are changing over time, and how you, not just from the perspective of the celebrity, but from the perspective of the industry itself, where do you see that the industry going in its relationship with technology in 5 years, blue sky projection?
I think as changes in distribution are going to put additional pressure on the traditional business models, you're going to see people at the top have to inevitably exit. And I think a lot of people who have been in these businesses for a long time got a little bit ossified in the way they look at technology. There's still people who think that piracy is the only reason that music is having trouble. Those people are going to make their exit in 5 years. Is not a bad time horizon, I think, to imagine that starting to take place in music and other parts of Hollywood. I think there's going to be, that's the time horizon that I'm looking towards for all these industries to be a much more fruitful combination of technology, audiences, and content.
Awesome. Back there.
Thanks, guys. I was wondering if any of you had a chance to work with merchandising or toys or gadgets, something of that nature. How much does that complicate the process, and how easy it is? If you have a toy or a gadget that you think is a perfect matchup for X celebrity or Y celebrity, is it basically the same thing, or just more intellectual property BS, more?
No, it's actually a much more clear-cut way. I think, merchandising specifically, products and retail products have had a long storied history, and there's a lot of ways that you can do those deals. but it's far more clear cut. You know, when you're talking about a startup and equity and who's involved and the VCs, that's new territory for a lot of celebrities. But you know, artists do licensing deals all the time. Artists do joint ventures around physical products all the time. And consumer retail is sort of, we have a whole licensing division of agents who spend all of their lives going out and helping negotiate deals with celebrities for new products or helping them create new products and finding manufacturers for it. And so I think that's a much more clear-cut process. It's been going on a lot longer.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Unfortunately, we're out of time. One of the reasons why we did this panel was to get guys like these out in the wild in front of all of you. So I hope that they're going to take a couple minutes and chat, come talk to them. You can then pitch them your idea if you really want. But first of all, thank you guys so much, everybody, for coming out.